Hello friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time, and I'm here today to talk about anemia and do you really need iron if you are anemic. Now, I recently had a video come out, well, it'll probably be about a month by the time you're seeing this video, about cast iron in your health, where I covered some issues related to cast iron, both good and bad, depending on who you are and what possible health issues you may have. Now, not everyone needs iron, and this is the part that tends to blow people's mind. Not everybody that is anemic needs iron. So one thing I didn't explain well enough in there because it was more focused on the cast iron, but I wanted to go into more detail here, is about the importance of having a good balance and the mistake that is commonly made when somebody is discovered that they are anemic. A lot of times, a great number of times, the mistake is on the part of the doctors. Now, if you go to the doctor or if you've been to the doctor and they have diagnosed you with anemia, but they haven't checked the iron levels in your blood and they're prescribing you iron, tell them to do a test for iron before you start taking any kind of iron supplements. This is incredibly important because what some people don't realize is that just like too little iron can cause a person to be anemic, too much iron can make a person anemic. And certain blood traits, such as myself with thalassemia, can cause a person to very easily get too much iron in their blood. And so taking an iron supplement can actually be deadly if it's taken in high doses and long periods of time. If nothing else, it's going to make you very, very anemic. It's not that thalassemia means you're anemic. It's that if you're thalassemic and you're taking iron or getting too much iron, you will become anemic. And so this is very important. I've had a couple of bad incidents in my life where doctors, one was when I was pregnant, and I didn't share this one because that video was already too long, but when I was pregnant with my second son, I already knew that I shouldn't be taking any kind of iron supplements. Well, as to be expected, towards the end of the pregnancy, I was becoming a little anemic. And so the doctor told me I needed to start taking iron. He insisted. And so he says, well, you got to think of your baby. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, most likely my baby is thalassemic too and doesn't need iron. But of course, anytime you throw in your child in there, you think, well, okay, I do want to look out for my child. There is that chance maybe this one's not thalassemic like my oldest son. But I compromised and I took half the dose. Well, same problem started happening, and when I went back in for the next blood test, the next doctor's visit, and he saw that I was severely anemic, he freaked out and said, did you start taking the iron? I said, yes, but only half dose. And so when he came back with that information, I knew it was wrong. I knew he was wrong. He was a great doctor, but sadly, a lot of doctors think they know more about certain things than they really do. And this doctor should have just stuck with his own profession rather than assuming to know the needs of a thalassemic person. And by the way, I did stop taking iron from that day forward, and next time I went in, nobody said a word, even though they did more blood tests. I was fine. And so I wanted to bring up a few other things that when it comes to being anemic, just as I suspected, I did a little looking, and there's many other things that can cause a person to be anemic that have nothing to do with low iron count. And iron is just one of those supplements that's far too easy for people to get too much of. And just like any supplements, we should always be taking care, not just of how much we're taking, but the kinds that we are taking, and try to become more dependent on natural means and food sources for getting the minerals and vitamins that our body needs. So let me go over a few other things that could be causing you to be anemic. And what anemia is it's a low blood count, low hemoglobin. That means you don't have as many red blood cells, or your blood cells have maybe a defective shape, such as in sickle cell anemia, or your blood cells are just smaller, which is usually the case with thalassemics. You have smaller blood cells, so they're not carrying the oxygen and the nutrients through the system as fast as a person with normal hemoglobin levels and normal size and shape blood cells. Now, some other things that can cause anemia would be different types of diseases, such as cancer, or anything that causes inflammation, such as Crohn's disease, arthritis, or kidney disease. You name it. Anything that's going to cause inflammation can lower your blood count and thus make you anemic. Now, other nutrients or lack thereof that can cause you to be anemic would be B12, vitamin C, and folate, also known as folic acid or vitamin B9. So let's talk about the folate and the vitamin B12. I'm going to list off just a few of the things that you can, food sources that is, that you can get these from. So starting with the vitamin B12. Unfortunately for you vegans, most of your natural sources for vitamin B12 are going to come from animal products. That's most of your fatty type fish like salmon, tuna, and trout is an excellent one, which is my very favorite. Beef, animal livers, not my favorite. One of the few things I really do not like. But if you like liver, that's a good source of both iron and vitamin B12. And of course, sardines, clams, dairy products, again, making sure you're trying to go with the most organic and healthy raised animal dairy products so that, you know, cheese and any of that stuff. Now, you can get B12 as a supplement or fortified foods like nutritional yeast tends to be fortified with vitamin B12. But if that vitamin B12 was obtained naturally and not synthesized, which is most of the case when you're talking about fortified foods, it's something that's been synthesized and then added to foods, then you have to understand that nutritional yeast might not actually be vegan if they got that vitamin B12 that they fortified it with from an actual natural source and didn't synthesize it. So keep all these things in mind and make sure you do your own research. And there are other sources out there. Remember to do your searches. You know your body needs certain nutrients and you want to figure out what foods are high in these. It's as simple as going to your browser and typing in what foods are high in and then list that. Folate or vitamin B12 or iron and so on. And you should find several links that can give you a pretty good list, and I would say check out 3, 4, even 5 of those different lists and cross compare them. I say that about everything. Don't stick with one source for your information. So let's talk about some foods that are high in folate or folic acid, again also known as vitamin B9. You rarely hear it called that. And this is great for vegans because a lot of this does come from plant-based sources such as legumes, so that would be your beans and peas and so on, asparagus, any of your dark leafy greens like kale and collards, spinach, broccoli, and beets, and eggs. There's more than that. I just wanted to list a few to kind of get you started and get you thinking. Remember to do your search for that. So if you're anemic or you go to the doctor and you find out you're anemic and he hasn't done a test, maybe it's some of these other things. Figure out if you might have any chronic condition that's causing inflammation that can cause that, or if it's possible you are deficient in some of these vitamins. During my times of being both vegetarian and then later in life being a vegan, these were not diets that worked well for me because I needed that vitamin B12, especially because I am thalassemic. I'm going to need that vitamin B12 and that folate even more so. Other than cooking in cast iron, I cannot be taking any kind of iron supplements or intentionally adding other sources of iron to my diet. Now, if you're interested in more about the cast iron and cooking with it, whether it be you are low in iron or high in iron, and is it safe, well, please check out that video. I go into more detail about that and I will link to it down below. And I just wanted to make this a quick video, but before I close it out, I wanted to cover one more thing. This whole idea of doctors only checking for a certain thing and not other things before prescribing you any kind of medicine or vitamin or mineral supplement is done far too many times. You see the same thing happen with thyroid. Most doctors, now some are better than others, but in a lot of cases, they're only checking your TSH. That's your thyroid stimulating hormone. And so what they do is if they see that hormone is high, then they'll just say, oh, that means your thyroid is low, so I'm going to put you on thyroid medication. But just like with anemia, there's other things that can cause your TSH levels to go up. So if doctors are not doing the proper test to find out what you really need or what's actually causing your blood pressure to go up, your TSH levels to go up, or your hemoglobin to go down, and they're prescribing something to you, that is wrong. You need to make sure you're getting all the proper blood work done before, and get a second opinion before you go on any kind of medication or take especially high doses, especially of any kind of synthesized nutrient. So you always have to double check everything. Remember, if you've been following us for any amount of time, you'll know that Patrick and I were both on thyroid medication for 15 years because we were convinced that's what we needed. But that last 5 years that I was on it, I started thinking, I just started feeling this was wrong. And of course it was synthetic. And so I started doing my own research, which at that time was hard to find. We've been off of our thyroid medication for, I think it's been 9 years as of right now, if I remember correctly. 10 at the most, but I know it was spring that we took ourselves off the thyroid medication. I will link to that video that we did a few years ago about how we did it down below. I recommend you watch the whole thing, listen closely. This is for hypothyroidism, not hyperthyroidism. I also include a list in both the description box and a pinned comment below that video on the many things that you can either remove from your diet or add to your diet to help strengthen and nourish your thyroid so that you do not have to either go on the thyroid medicine or you can possibly get yourself off successfully like we did. Again, always do your research and everything. Even anything I tell you, I'm always learning as I go. So don't take anything I say as solid proof fact. Each person is going to be different in what their body needs, and you need to look things up for your own self. Always do your own research and cross-compare all the information you get from anyone, whether they be from YouTube, from a blog site, or even a medical site. So WebMD might have some good information, but I absolutely would not trust them 100% with many things. Same thing goes with the Mayo Clinic. Be careful of your sources. Again, you can get in good information, but not all of it is good. Healthline is another one. I found some really good information there, but I've also found some very bad information on there. At least very bad when it comes to me, that wouldn't apply. So be very careful and look into everything before you just leap. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Thanks for watching. Take care and God bless.